As I said, I'm Tim Wynn Jones from British Gas, and a slightly different angle on today from us on how data can enable large energy users to participate in a distributed energy future. I'll explain more about what that future looks like for British Gas, for Centrica and for our customers. But first, if I can just give a bit of context about British Gas. So everyone in the room will have heard of British Gas. We're the largest residential supplier, is probably what we're best known for. We supply over 40% of the UK's homes with gas and electricity. We're also known for having a very large field workforce, 9,000 engineers out on the road, so everywhere you go, you're very likely to see a British Gas van. And we sponsor property on Channel 4, is another thing we're very well known for. What we're less known for is we're actually also the UK's largest supplier of energy to businesses. And so we supply over 850,000 sites throughout the UK with gas and electricity. But another subset of that, which is less known, but we actually have a greater focus on, is how we can help those end customers manage and control their energy consumption and to actually realise opportunities and benefits from how they generate their energy, when they use it, and how they use it. So our vision is to turn energy from a cost and a potential risk into a source of competitive advantage. This is particularly salient in the food and drink industry. We're very fortunate. We have a presence in every industry in the UK: agriculture, finance, IT, banking. Food and drink is one of the largest presences that we have in the UK, and there's good reason for that. So this is taken from the Food and Drink Federation. There's some figures about the food and drink industry in the UK. It is the largest subsector of manufacturing in the UK. You can see the figures there, turning over 95.4 billion. These are annual figures, 18.3%. Proportion of the manufacturing sector in the UK, making it our largest subsector. 35 terawatt hours is the annual consumption, and that's of the industry. And that is just metered consumption from grid. That doesn't take into account off-grid as well. And also, the last figure there, 9.48 million tonnes of carbon per annum is emitted from the food and drink industry in the UK. So this slide shows that there have been great improvements, both in terms of energy consumption and carbon emissions in the industry. Both are trending downwards, which is fantastic, leading up to 2014 and 2015. However, if you look at the bottom green line, that's electricity. You'll see on the top graph there, energy consumption, electricity has stayed relatively steady. So the reductions in energy consumption have been predominantly through heat reduction. On the flip side of that, we're going to see increased electrification of heat. That is going to mean that that green line is going to start to rise again. Also, and particularly salient today, as the industry has become increasingly data-driven, that's led to very power-hungry data centres. And an added ingredient to that is their absolute need for security of supply. You can see what's been driving those various declines there. There's been a lot of rationalisation, so fewer plant, they're much more efficient. On the flip side, non-commodity costs, i.e. non-energy costs, are making up now over 50% of large energy users' bills. That is primarily for transmission and distribution of energy around the national grid. When we go to the pump and fill up petrol in the car, everyone knows, only a proportion of what you're paying is actually for the fuel. All else of it is tax as well, and for us to get to those fuels. So it's a similar story with energy. So those are rising, and by 2020, those are going to be pushed up towards 60%. So if you're not actively looking at ways to reduce your dependence on grid energy, you're going to simply be a passive recipient of bills that are going up. There's a very misleading narrative from media and politicians about wholesale energy prices falling. They are, but they fluctuate greatly. It's this element that isn't taken into account. So that just sets out a bit of context. If we look at the evolution of the energy industry, for 150 years, we relied on centralised power plant that were emitting a steady flow of energy that was being pushed around the national grid and the district networks. to the end users. Since 1990, to combat climate change, renewables were heavily incentivised, predominantly solar and wind. So we've all seen large-scale solar farms, large-scale wind farms, and those have done a lot to help us achieve our carbon reduction commitments. At the same time, they have created a problem in terms of policy, and our infrastructure haven't kept pace with that development. You can see here the share of intermittent renewables is set to increase by 30% by 2020. That intermittency goes against the old model of a consistent baseload going onto the grid. We've also had old, inefficient power plant being decommissioned, particularly coal-fired power plants, again in line with carbon reduction targets, which again, everybody in the industry recognises as necessary. We don't want to be dependent on oil, we want to be dependent on clean tech, new fuels, low carbon economy. However, this is leaving a potential supply gap. That supply gap presents a fantastic opportunity for large energy users, as I said, to go from being a passive recipient of energy and bills to an active participant in a new energy system. And that is what British Gas is here to facilitate. In meeting the demand for the UK, we have opportunities for large energy consumers to become net exporters of energy so that they are also generating energy, putting it back onto the grid at times that it's not used on their own site. Integrated into that are a range of technologies. So it could be, for example, solar PV, combined heat and power, use of backup generators at times of peak demand to avoid high costs, and crucially battery storage as well. This can unlock a lot of revenue streams. So it's not just about avoiding costs, it's actually about creating new revenue streams for your businesses. These are a series of initiatives implemented by the National Grid. Frequency response is instantaneous response. So if the National Grid put out a call to say, we need more supply on the grid, they can encourage businesses to either turn off, turn down, or switch to embedded generation so that that power becomes available to the National Grid. And that attracts a reward mechanism that is paid back to the customer. Reserve is response time within minutes, and the capacity mechanism is a catch-all term for the capacity market, which is again where both customers, aggregators, energy suppliers can bid into that capacity market to say, we have this amount of energy capacity that we can make available to the National Grid, and they're paid for that. And then also the final one in the bottom left-hand corner, peak avoidance. So this comes back to what I was saying earlier on about transmission distribution costs. Those can be avoided, creating a significant saving on your bills. That journey starts with data. Perhaps aptly for today, and it can start with something as simple as that. So we own a company called Panoramic Power, and these are wireless and powerless sensors. There's no battery in there. They simply clip on at circuit board level to cables of energy consuming equipment. They then send data wirelessly via a receiver to a cloud. So it's cloud-based analytics that can analyze data in real time. This is streets ahead of where the industry has been for a number of years, where we've been heavily reliant on half-hourly data, and that's quite often day ahead. The fact this is real time means that you can needle into exactly how much energy you're consuming across your site, which pieces of kit are consuming that energy, how much they're consuming, and also there's the added benefit, is that kit performing as it should? Is it showing anything that it shouldn't? Anomalies can be quickly pulled out, and that can play into predictive maintenance. So instead of kit going down and you facing significant losses through interruption of supply, you can predict before it gets to that stage. All of that can generate significant savings that you would have already budgeted for via what you pay in your energy bills. Those savings can then be reinvested, overlaid with revenue generation opportunities. So for example, if you had solar PV, you could store energy from the solar PV in a battery and then put that onto the grid at times of peak demand, or simply self-supply during that time. And again, you'd be generating a significant saving. So this is just a quick demonstration of the panoramic power platform. As I say, these come in various sizes. If you'd like to come and see us, we're on stand 3 after this, so we can show you a quick demo kit there. But these will snap on to those wires. They're powered by the magnetic force of the wires and the cables, so there's no battery involved at all. And then from there, from desktop, tablet, wherever it may be, you can analyse exactly what energy you're using across the site. From there, you can develop a holistic energy strategy. So actually, are there opportunities for us to switch off some machinery? For example, cooling. We all know that if there's a power cut at home, our freezer is going to be fine and our food is not going to perish for a certain period of time. Therefore, if you can shut down for that period, make that energy available to the grid, you're automatically realising both a saving and a potential revenue generation opportunity. This is just a bit more information about the peak avoidance that we talked about before. So, TNUoS, transmission network use of system charges, is a significant proportion of what large energy users will pay on their bill. These are calculated via triads. So triad periods come 3 times. They're the peak periods of demand during the winter. Your usage at that time will determine the TNUoS rates that are applied to your bill. Therefore, with insight from British Gas about when those are going to come and the ability to remotely control your energy assets, as we said before, you can turn off, turn down, or switch to embedded generation, and that will significantly reduce the amount you pay through your bills throughout the year. Similarly, GEOS. So GEOS is distribution use of system charges. These are, again, recovered via the energy bill. So the suppliers will pass them through to the end consumer of the energy. These are high rates, red band rates applied between 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock, typically, in the afternoon, early evening, Monday to Friday. If, through a combination of energy efficiency and self-generation or battery storage, you can reduce your consumption during that time, again, you're realising significant savings on your bill, but also if you have the flexibility, and this is all about flexibility, of how and when you can use the energy and or put it back onto the grid, then you can overlay the revenue generation on top of that as well. That can then build real momentum because you're realising those revenue streams and savings that can then be reinvested. So if there's constraints around how much capital you have to invest, because everybody wants to invest in making their systems more efficient, but we all appreciate there's a cost, this can immediately create a pot of money that has already been accounted for. So the distributed energy model, just to explain it very quickly, is the building on the left there is your building. We would optimise the energy efficiency of that building, make sure that the lighting is optimised, LED lighting, building management systems, looking at optimising your backup generators so that those don't just sit there in case of a blackout gathering dust. They can actually be used for the peak avoidance that we discussed, and also opportunities for any on-site generation. And again, British Gas has the capability to implement and build on-site generation for our customers. We've done so. Toyota, we built a 4.1 megawatt solar farm that is directly embedded to their factory. We've worked with a number of other customers, Veolia, Sainsbury's. All of the costs for that would either be paid through the energy bill if you are a supply customer of British Gas, but you do not have to be a supply customer of British Gas to take advantage of these services. They can just be paid for independently. All of that would feed through our energy control centre. So that is a virtual platform where we can monitor and control energy assets throughout the UK. We can then manage export to the national grid and DNO, and also crucially, Centrica, our parent company, can trade any excess energy on the wholesale market. So it can open up opportunities that if you have energy that you do not need to consume on site, rather than simply curtailing that energy, you can realise an income from it. And then availability payments and utilisation payments come back the other way. Just to expand on that, flexibility, as I said, is key. Generators, battery storage, innovation, so that could include fuel cell technology in the future. We have teams dedicated to R&D who are working very actively in this space. And from there, the various avenues that can be pursued. The bottom point there is crucial. There is absolutely no interruption to business operations as a result of this. We promise that no opportunity to realise savings or revenues would compromise your continuity. Just to illustrate how active we are across the energy chain, so we install on-site generation, energy efficiency, we'll operate and maintain that equipment. We can then manage tryouts and network optimization and give you access to wholesale trading of that energy. And this is all done giving you complete visibility end to end. The benefits, and this is just my last couple of slides here, is in the past, this has been known as the trilemma. It's always been a trade-off. If you wanted low carbon energy, you had to pay a premium for it. If you wanted secure energy, then quite likely it could be a heavily polluting source. So your carbon emissions went up. If you wanted lower cost energy, etc., there was always a trade-off. Now, these can work. It's commercially viable that these can complement each other through this model. And the bottom line is that actually it does go straight to the bottom line. You can make significant savings through optimizing what you have on site already, implementing new technologies, and also, as we say here, for every megawatt of backup generation that you may have or primary generation, you can earn up to £80,000 per annum in EBITDA. Thank you very much.